Kelli Garner, you played Marilyn Monroe, and the younger version of Marilyn Monroe, Norma Jean, in the miniseries for Lifetime that just recently aired. Boy, you talk about taking on an iconic role. Were you scared?
I was terrified. I was really, really, really terrified. But I was also kind of, as like a 31-year-old actress, well, 30 at the time. I was sick of not taking challenges because I was afraid to fail. So it was just like all the pieces were there for me to like get out of my own way and just try to do what I love to do at the best of my ability, you know?
What did you know about her before you got started?
You know, the tragic tale. I knew a few films. It's hard to live in Hollywood, California, and not see her face on a daily basis. So I knew her beauty. But I didn't really know much about like her life, or really her work as an actress. So it was really fun to kind of get to like watch all those old movies and really fall in love with a woman that I knew I loved. You know, something resonated about her. Whenever I see a photo or would see an image, she's piercing. She takes my breath away. But like to really start to fall in love with her, to be really educated on who she is and her work was quite an honor and fun.
Well, beyond the beauty, I mean, you could tell, especially in your portrayal, and I'm sure this was true for the screenwriter that wrote the book and so forth, she really, really wanted to be taken seriously as an actress. She wanted to be a really good actress.
She wanted to be a really good actress. She wanted to be a really well-rounded, smart, beautiful human being, I think, you know.
But some people just wouldn't, they couldn't see beyond the beauty to think of her that way.
No, and especially probably not in that time either, you know? So it must have been very claustrophobic in a way to be Marilyn Monroe.
I like the structure of this project, the way that it starts out with, you know, her and you know, into her career, meeting with the new doctor, and then going back in time and so forth.
Yeah, the fictional therapist, I think it's a really smart vice that they use to tell her story. And for me, that was, you know, so much about this project when like the email just comes across your email and you're like, oh boy, like so much about it was so terrifying and just wrong at the beginning. But then when I sat down and actually started reading it, I think it was that device right there of Marilyn in therapy, of Marilyn really trying to figure it out. And that's how they told her story that really kind of sparked my interest. You know, I was like, oh, that's cool. I love sitting in therapy. You know, I love that sounding board. I love having conversations and asking questions and learning about myself and not being judged and all those things. So I was like, oh, I like this. I like this format.
And for Marilyn, I mean, the character that we see, like you say, it's a fictional doctor that she's seeing, but it really lets you the audience get into her head and as to what she was thinking.
Yeah, I think so. And we even like pulled some of her famous quotes and kind of threw them in there in that therapy session, which I think is really nice because that is really things that she was thinking.
Now, did you shoot this chronologically in terms of when she was younger up to when she passed away, or how did you shoot it?
I wish we could have shot chronologically. It was actually pretty mean what they did to me. The first week of shooting was all therapy. Therapy was shot chronologically, which is great because you get to develop that relationship and let it kind of bleed into the opening up and all like those kind of emotions and how you hide and defend yourself, you know, when somebody starts to see who you really are. But other than that, I mean, on any given day, I'd go from 1960s Marilyn to 1940s Norma Jean to 1950s Marilyn. And like, that's hard as an actress because it is, at least for me, because I'm not good at looking at the big picture. Like, that's not my job necessarily. I find that the job of like the director and the producers to kind of make sure your world stays contained while I focus on like the task at hand. But boy, I felt really bad for like hair and makeup, like Jordan Samuel and Cleona, who are like having to like, you know, really knock it down and knock it up. And it was intense. You know, it was a very, very intense schedule. As you know, when you do anything in television, it moves really fast. It's really long hours. I almost don't even remember shooting the miniseries. I'm like, what? That happened? Awesome.
Well, I've heard other actors over the years, we've had some on with us, talk about when they are shooting something that's over a long period of time, they have to really rely on the director and the people around them to keep them in the headspace of, okay, here's what you're thinking, here's who you are today.
Yeah. Here's what happened before, and here's what's going to happen after. Or your character doesn't need to know that, but you should know, like, you've just come from this, you know, and you're like, oh, thanks, because like you have a script, you can do that work yourself. But when you're shooting, in our case, like 7 scenes a day, one of the hardest part of my jobs was to just know the scene, you know the ebb and the flow and the arc of the scene and the subtext of the scene. And that takes so much, especially when then you've got 6 more to do in a day. And like maybe you've been forced because you spend 2.5 hours in makeup and like everything's behind, and you've got like Chris Manley, who shot like all of Mad Men, who wants to like light it beautifully. And it's just like, you know, everyone just has to focus on their thing, and it just happens really fast. And then somewhere in there you have to sleep. So I mean, it's fun, you know. I think it's why it's so funny, because I'm always searching for consistency in my life, but I've chosen a profession that's very inconsistent. And for me, I don't think I could consistently be an actor, you know. Like after I finished this project, I was like drained of any creative fluids or juice that I might have. And like, so it's nice, you like hit it hard, and then you kind of hibernate and circulate, you know, everything you couldn't do for yourself for those 3 months of like grind.
Well, because she was an actress and you're an actress and you're playing that whole, did that journey you went on help you? Like, you think it's going to help you going down the road, you know, do an even better job at what you do?
I think so. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from this experience. I guess you could say I've learned a lot from Marilyn as well. You know, speaking on what we were just talking about, like, it's exhausting. It's a hard work to be an actor, and it's the mental challenge, the mental health that comes with it. I think especially as a woman, where you are so scrutinized and looked at aesthetically as well, like not just like as a performer, where it's just like it's full on. And I think for me, I've been acting for 15 years, and like I love my resume. Like, I think I have one of like the weirdest, coolest like resumes. I've been doing it for so long, and I forgot. Probably 2 years before this, I went through a really weird phase where I was so scared because I wasn't having fun anymore. And it was everything that I had invested my vocation, you know, to be my vocation was this. And my biggest fear was to not love it. And I had become bored, and I just stopped having fun. And I think if Marilyn taught me anything, was one, that it sometimes is work to be happy. And 2, that it's important to have fun. You have to force yourself to have fun, and when you stop having fun, then you gotta like reevaluate. And so she reminded me that she has this quote, you know, like always keep a giggle inside. And so I think this whole process really taught me to continue to not take myself too seriously, and to like just have fun and be fearless, you know, like stop, like don't put the cart in front of the horse, and just like be present and like, you know, fight. Like she was a hard worker. That girl had work ethic. Like, she knew what she wanted. She was not going to stop. And like, there's a lot that you have to carry that comes with that. And I think I got a little peek into that.
Well, speaking of fun, those different stages of her life, from the early Norma Jean up through, you know, arriving in Hollywood, through making the movies, and then that tormented, you know, last section, as an actress, was one of those areas more fun than another?
Yeah, Norma Jean, 1940s, like not the dark-haired Norma Jean, not like 15-year-old Norma Jean, but like when she starts to become a model and starts to like understand her beauty. You know, that whole kind of sequence, the Tom Kelly nude photo shoot of her kind of like going up was maybe my favorite stuff, because there's a little bit of like free license in playing Norma Jean more than playing Marilyn. So like, it was just more explorative, I suppose. Yeah.
Not, I mean, obviously we wouldn't have seen much of her in those days, so you could explore, you could do what you wanted to more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I could bring a little bit more of like me at 22 out
Right, right.
than here.
Well, I've got to say though, those I think sometimes I was born at the wrong time. That 50s glamorous Hollywood, when she was really making the films, and that's a fun stretch of time to watch in any movie.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was just like a really fun time in cinema too, you know, which is interesting to see her go from the 50s into the 60s, like something like The Misfits, where I feel like Arthur Miller was kind of trying to take her out of that little more like tongue-in-cheek singing and dancing type of film that I love that doesn't quite exist anymore, and into a more kind of like internal, cerebral, different type of filmmaking. And so I also love seeing like just seeing the history of film and her in it change from the 50s to some of her work in the 60s. Is those are the decades. Those are the decades, the 40s through the 70s. That's what I wish I would have been alive for.
Yeah, that's anytime there's a movie that stretches into that, especially a Hollywood type movie, it's hard for me to tune away. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you.
Now, of all the films, we haven't mentioned anyone, well, only one I think specifically, but is there a movie of hers that you like more than all the others?
I think Some Like It Hot is like the best of all of her films. Like, as you know, 'cause some of her films are a little weird, you know, like you watch them now and you're like, oh, she's great, but like this film's just bizarre. I think Some Like It Hot is just a beautiful film all around. But I think one of my favorite captures of Marilyn is The Misfits, because she's broken in it, you know, and she's really fragile in it. And I just really, that was like the thing that I could watch that humanized her for me, because the other stuff, like she's so epic, looking, sounding, everything, you know, it's just insane to me that she even existed. It was hard for her to be real to me until I think I saw The Misfits. And then you can see not just the cracks in her veneer, not just the cracks in her skin, like, you know, this thing that kind of makes her a little bit more tangible, I suppose, but just mentally, emotionally, the state that she was at while shooting that. She was a real woman to me finally.
She could have taken that and you know, gone on to make more films in the 60s and 70s and aged on screen. You just think that would have been the direction she would have gone.
Of course. Yeah. She would have got her Oscars. Like she's too talented. I've been saying this a lot, you know, but she's such a brilliant nonverbal communicator. You know, she does it with her body and with her eyes. And like, I think it's a huge talent, you know. I think she would have just kept going in that direction. It's a shame. I think I loved her voice. You know, some people say that Marilyn Monroe was like they call her like the anti-feminist, and maybe like the image of Marilyn Monroe could be that, but I actually find her a really strong, beautiful, important voice. You know, she stood up for her pay, and she stood up to the heads of her studio, and she left all of her marriages, you know, like she wanted to be smarter. She went to school, she went to classes, she wanted like Ella Fitzgerald to like sing, you know, like what the thing was her, you know, like she was so cool. So I just like, it's sad, you know, I would have loved to have seen what her voice would have continued to do for the world.
Well, you worked with a great cast on this movie.
Oh, yeah, I did.
I wanted to ask you about a couple of them. Oscar winner Susan Sarandon. What was she like?
Susan's awesome. She's intimidating, you know, because she's so cool. Like there's no pretense. Like there's nothing there. So it's like it's really intimidating at first, especially just as a younger actress, to be like, oh shit, I'm about to sit in a scene with her. Like, I hope I can hold my ground. But to find out just how cool she was, and I find her really vocal. Like as a woman, I really love her woman. I want to learn from her woman. She's just so smart, and she's chill. And well, I've not met many women actresses like her, so.
And she was another one that started very young in the industry and had to grow up quickly.
Yeah. 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 Oh.
And we've interviewed Jeffrey Dean Morgan before. I just thought he was really good in this.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting. I love that, you know, he has this stoic, simple, strong quality. And like as an actress, when I was working with him, like when actors do that, I'm like so fascinated, because for me, I can be a little spastic, you know, like, or I can just be very like open, and it's so nice to not only be in a scene with it, but then watch it back, because it's like he knows the camera picks up, like the camera loves that from him. I just think he's great as Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah, he's really good. And that, you know, even a lot of the people that had a line or two, or I mean, they were also just such a well cast project.
Yeah, well, Laurie Collier, the director, you know, she's got a good eye. She's a very smart woman, and she comes from a very independent film background. So I think she just wanted to make sure, you know, within our parameters, that like even the little lines were like somebody interesting and like, you know, worth it. It shows. It's like it's all in the details sometimes.
Well, since you shot it all out of sequence, when you first saw it all put together, what'd you think?
Well, speaking of shooting out of sequence, the first thing that I saw was the second half at the premiere. So I had to watch it in like a theater full of thousands of people for the first time, which is like terrifying. I'd have a few glasses of wine before that premiere. But to watch the second act first was a little disjointing. And for me too, as a performer, it takes me a couple times in seeing something to where I can actually see it. And I'm not like in this weird place of like over analyzing like what I'm doing, or like remembering like what it was like from my point of view. But that said, now having seen it all together, I watched it live when it aired, which was fun with just a few friends right here in my living room. I'm happy with it, you know, like I'm really proud of Lifetime, actually. You know, it was scary to want to do a mini series for them, you know, but they fought and have been fighting for a while, and turning out some beautiful things where they really want to kind of rebrand, and television is such a beautiful place to get to perform in such a great medium. And so I'm just like, I just think it's great for them. Like I think it's beautiful that it's on their network.
Well, we work with a lot of those executives, and they really have, I think, changed the whole climate there the last 3 or 4 years in terms of wanting to do prestigious projects like this.
Yeah. And I think they did a really great job with it.
Well, we think you might be Emmy nominated here in a few weeks.
Oh yeah, who's we?
Well, we're an awards website, so we are our editing staff, but also the thousands of people that visit us every day.
That's awesome.
I was looking back, you know, at the Emmys. Catherine Hicks, Ashley Judd, and Mira Sorvino have all been nominated for playing Marilyn Monroe.
Have they really?
Yeah, 81, and then Ashley and Mira played. One of them played Norma Jean, and one of them played Marilyn, but they were both. It was like almost an equal time thing. But yeah, that was like in '96, and of course Michelle Williams at the Oscars just a couple of years ago.
Well, look, now with my luck, all these other people are going to get nominated for playing her. It's just not going to happen for me, which I'm fine with. But I think to play Marilyn Monroe, yeah, like that gets some attention.
Well, I think it's attention grabbing, but it's also, she's just, I mean, as you well know, she's just so complex that the type of person that gets to play her, that's just something you just dream of as an actress.
Kind of, yeah, absolutely. Except I'd never dreamed to play Marilyn Monroe. I didn't know that I wanted to until I started playing her, and I was like, oh, this is better than I could have ever dreamed. Oh, great! This is wonderful.
And now, for the rest of your life, if somebody in your presence says something negative about her, you will defend her to the ends, right?
I think so. I think I always will, and that's not just because I played her, but just because I think she's wonderful, and I think it's like silly to say anything negative about anybody, right? You learn this as you grow up. You get out of your 20s, and you're like, you know what? It's just stupid to say anything negative about anybody, let alone somebody who is not here to defend themselves. so yeah, I would just be like, man, move on. Like it's 2015. Let's talk about something else.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck on those Emmys. We think you might be there.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Bye.